Kate Herron, you directed season 1 of Loki, and I understand you went in with a huge PowerPoint presentation when you met about doing the show. So what was in that PowerPoint presentation?
Oh boy. I mean, I went for it, yeah. Like, I think because like I love Marvel and I love Loki, but I knew that my background, I'd done sex education, which I'm so proud to have been part of, but my background was mainly in drama and comedy shows. So I knew it was something slightly out of what I could at least show I could do as a director. So I basically went in with, I don't know, like world building ideas, design ideas. For example, like the time stage theater, initially when that was written, it kind of read like we would cut to the clip of the memory. And I was like, I think what would be cool is like, I was really inspired by Minority Report. And in that, Tom Cruise sees a projection of his wife and she's like basically a life-size 3D projection. And I was like, this is what we should do for the time theater, because then we can stay in the room with Loki as he sees these memories play out. And because, we have an amazing actor like Tom Hiddleston, you want to put the camera, up close and see our Loki's reaction, because on the one hand, as an MCU fan who's seen what he's seen already, it's so fascinating seeing a character almost be, react to what you've seen and have similar reactions to you. But also, even if you haven't or aren't as familiar with the films, I just think there was something so emotionally that connected you to him in that moment, when he does see those memories play out. So yeah, so I had stuff like that. But no, I mean, honestly, the whole pitch was everything. It was like style, casting ideas, like Google was in my pitch. Music, I had like a playlist for them. I mean, I think it had 280 slides. Yeah, that was a lot. And I remember just talking really quickly and just going through hundreds of pictures. And yeah, but I mean, I had everything in it, like retro futuristic technology, the Brazil aspect of the TVA, brutalist architecture mixed in with the Midwest kind of Mad Men style. I mean, everything. Yeah, everything that people could think about in the show, like the look of the void, that I wanted it to look like an overgrown garden and a forgotten place. Because that, I think, felt like kind of cool to me and felt appropriate for the void. And then Lamentus as well, like ideas for that. Like, I remember Bishop's script was written so beautifully, and that finale, it felt like you wanted to be with them in the moment. So I was saying, I think this would be, I think there's cool places where you could just put a oneer in a show, and we'll put them in a few places, maybe like the odd walk and talk, but this feels like almost like a set, like not set piece, sorry, but like a moment where you want to feel like you're along with the characters for a ride. So let's make this like a proper cool, like oneer kind of style, because we had cuts obviously in our one, but yeah, so everything. I mean, honestly, it was like a big download of my brain. But I think the key thing with it for me though was like, well, I'm not going to try and second guess what they're after, because I'm never going to know that, because the secrecy in Marvel is so real. So I thought, well, I've got these really good scripts. I'm just going to take my interpretation of them to them and say, like, if you hire me, this is what you'll get. And I think that's really key as well for a director, because I sometimes meet other directors and I think I've definitely felt this, but I think sometimes there can be a feeling of, oh no, I need to kind of just do what they want, and I'm sort of lucky to be here, and don't get me wrong, very lucky to be here, but more in the sense of, okay, well, I'm going to tell them my interpretation of it. And I remember Kevin Feige saying that was a big part of what got me the job, because like, I mean, even just the look of it, like, in the scripts, I really loved how they described Sylvie attacking from the shadows, and I was like, well, this makes me think of detective movies and film noir, and like, what about if we take that look and put it across the whole show? Because it feels to me like a mystery story anyway, and that feels appropriate, but also it'll be a slightly different look. And it also just feels very Loki, you can have a bit of the darkness with the light. So yeah.
It sounds like you were immediately inspired and you had this very like clear vision. But I think what's great about it is like it felt like all the people behind it, like you and Michael Waldron, and the people you hired, you guys had this unified vision of bringing the look and the feel of the show to life. So can you talk about like hiring, I think the people that to bring this to life? Like I think your DP and your production designers, Kazra Farahani and Adam Darab were so vital to this as well, because the look is so unique, and it's like like analog but also futuristic, and
Mhm.
it feels like bureaucratic, and it's, you know, there's this sense of control, and obviously Loki is this agent of chaos, the god of mischief coming in.
Mhm.
So yeah, can you talk about like bringing everyone on board and bringing it to life?
Yeah, so I think for me it was exciting. So me and Kevin Wright, my producer, we were obviously going through and meeting lots of different heads of department. And I think for me, it's like, well, when Autumn came in, like I was already a big fan of her work, but she always talks about lighting like it's a character. And that for me was like already like, well, I know I want to do this noir kind of look, so that's great. But we just hit it off. Like, you know, like I remember when I first met her, we talk about film in the same way. She has this amazing shorthand, like even when we were filming, like I remember, for example, when we did episode 5 and we were blocking on the hill, and she was like, oh, why don't we film it like The Outsiders? I was like, oh my God, that's such a good, yes, let's do that. And we both talk in like cinema scenes as references because we both love movies. And I thought that for me was really exciting. And yeah, it's just like when we met, I think I showed her bits from my pitch. She obviously showed me her pitch. And it's just that thing where you're already creatively, you have the same taste. And I think that was really key with Autumn, and also with Kazra. Like when I met Kazra, me and Kazra had photos of old computers from the 80s that were in both our pitches. Because I remember he did his pitch and I was like, oh my God, I had that in my pitch. And I was like, immediately, this person is already on the same wavelength as me. And also with Kazra, like he's a fantastic storyteller and so funny. And that for me was really exciting because, for example, when Loki's arrested by the TVA, the cat in that cube, that was Kazra. He just drew in a, because he got his artist to draw a cat into that scene because he was like, oh, I just, you know, it'd be so funny. And I was like, oh man, that's so funny. And I was like, well, we've got to put that in the show now. That's like, because it's so hitchhiking.
Obviously, yeah, that was the star of the pilot, so
yeah. Like, so I think for me, that's the real key thing is like, as a director, it was really exciting because I feel like I've really found my team in my heads of department. And like Christine, our costume designer, same deal. Because, you know, it's a big thing having to build a whole entire world. And, you know, I mean, her spoke about, okay, well, you know, we've got this Mad Men kind of look within the suits, but also like, how do we subvert that? And she had this great pitch, like she put this really cool line in on the shirts, which gives it that kind of sci-fi edge and something. I think the thing that echoed across the whole show was it has familiarity, but it should also have a sense of something new and a little bit different. And like, you know, there were things in there, like, for example, like, 'cause I've worked in a lot of offices and there were little details that I was trying to sneak in there that I hope will be familiar to anyone that's worked in an office. But again, show that in a way that, okay, but how do we show that in a place that controls all of time? So yeah, so no, I think
it's fitting because a lot of, you know, like you're saying, like the old computers, like we've all seen that before, and obviously they existed like decades ago, but there's something a little bit off about it, right?
yeah, well, I think it's because for me, like from a story perspective, I guess I would say it's like a cinema fan, you know, like I love Brazil, I love Blade Runner. I mean, Alien was one of our references. You can see the font on our computers is very similar to Alien. And I think for me, like the reason the older style will, you know, like retro futuristic technology is, you know, in the golden age of comic books, but also I was really excited by it because I've worked in offices and you don't get the latest tech. I used to type on a computer that should have been thrown out years ago, but it wasn't broken, so no one was going to replace it. And that to me feels like a very bureaucratic situation.
It's very true. IT is very slow.
Yeah. And I just was like, yeah, they probably wouldn't, because budget, you know, they probably would be like, well, it still works enough. So we'll replace it when it just finally breaks. And I think that was the really fun thing that all me and the team were really excited by as well, because, you know, you want it to feel like a real living, breathing office. I remember I said when I pitched, like I wanted coffee stains on paperwork, because also they don't sleep at the TVA. So I was like, what does an office full of people pulling constant all-nighters look like? So yeah, I mean, it was just a playground, honestly.
Mm-hmm. I love the show because there's so much dialogue, because that's what Loki does. He talks. And then like you were saying before with the time theater in the first episode, huge long extended scene between Loki and Mobius. And like, can you talk about some of your choices, like shooting those long scenes like that, and when you know to let the scene breathe and when to like cut back and forth between their reactions?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, for example, the first episode, it's all about I mean, it's always about status with Loki, but particularly for a scene, because at points he's like trying to kill Mobius, and then there's other points where he starts to listen to him. So I think for me as a director, it's like, okay, well, where is the camera right now? How close are we to the characters? Are they sharing the frame? Are they not sharing the frame? And I think the fun thing for me in Autumn was in episode 4, going back into that time theater again when Loki's arrested, we really wanted to get into the tennis match. So, we have our camera gliding, but then we have these extreme, like very extreme close-ups, because it is on a different kind of emotional level for these guys now, because Loki's betrayed him and they were friends. And I think for me, like, I love dialogue heavy scenes. Like, I just love them. So I think that's the key thing as a director, is like you said, it's about where to breathe in energy, where to just let the camera sit. And I mean, we did the same with Jonathan, like, it's really fun knowing like, okay, well, maybe let's pull back at this moment just because, he's jumping up on his desk, for example. Whereas there are moments where, because I think the key thing with He Who Remains is he's almost inviting the audience in. And I wanted the audience to almost get on side with him and be like, okay, his actions aren't great, but actually he does have a point. And, bringing the camera in so it feels more intimate in those moments, almost like you have the audience leaning in, like Loki and Sylvie. I think that's really key for me. So yeah, but I think in the time theater for me, honestly, it was holding back on going full screen with any memories unless they were new. So for example, DB Cooper, I was like, well, let's go into the footage here because this is something we haven't seen this yet. And that's so fun. Whereas like, when Loki sees his mother die, that was so important to feel like you were in the room and you were emotionally with, our Loki, because some of the audience will know that moment, some won't, but they do know it's someone watching the death of their mother. And I think, I don't want to cut to a full screen clip and see that. I want to feel like I'm in the room with our character.
Right. And just like him watching his own death too, like his life play out. Yeah. Well, so you did a similar thing later on when B15 or like Sophie shows B15 her memories. You don't cut to anything. It's so much more moving when you just watch her react. So
that scene was really interesting because there was a lot of back and forth about whether we should see her memories, but it was something so important to me and my editor, Emma McCleave, because, B15 is a character that thinks they have power, finds out they didn't have power. And I think that moment, Wumi's performance was beautiful. And I think it just gives her character, complete power in that moment over the story. And it felt important to me that we didn't see it. I just wanted to see her reacting, because for me, that's more exciting because one, it generates questions for me. I'm like, who is she? What is she seeing? That's exciting. Who could she have been? But also, again, I was like, it's nice to let her have that privacy within the story, because I think her, her expressions are telling you all the emotion that you need to know.
Right. And I think it's also fitting because we learn that the TVA is fake and like these people have lives, but we don't know it yet. And we do see some of Renslayer's, and like she has a different reaction than these people do, because she's like, seeking revenge, like who did this to me, I want to talk about the cast because the cast is amazing. You got Gugu like you wanted, but one of my favorite castings was Richard E. Grant, classic Loki. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so basically, I remember we were talking about the character of Classic, and I think, like, I love With Nail and it's one of my absolute all-time favorite movies. And I think, honestly, we were just thinking of actors because we wanted it to feel like Ghost of Christmas Past and Ghost of Christmas Future. And we were just thinking of actors that, could be, like Tom's dad or look like Tom. And I think one person that kept coming up was Richard E. Grant. And I think there's even been jokes where, because Richard and Tom know each other, but I think he once accepted an award for Tom and said, oh yes, I'm Tom's father. And but I just think, so they had that likeness, but also the exciting thing for us getting Richard was he can do it all. He has great heart and warmth as an actor. He's very good at being mischievous. And it's just, again, it's like you're trying to find a Loki, right? And I was like, well, he has all those Loki characteristics, and he's so good at playing the great pain and regret as well. And so, we asked him and hoped that he would be into it, and he was. And it was such a joy to work with him.
And you also had Alligator Loki, who I understand was a huge diva on set. You
Oh
posted
yeah.
a photo of Ali in his chair.
Honestly,
resting.
the hardest actor to work with has become an absolute nightmare since the show. Like, all gone to their head. Yeah.
Thinks he's the star. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to be back for season 2, right?
No, I'm not. Yeah. I was just on for season 1, but I honestly, it was one of the best experiences of my life. And I feel like it's completely changed who I am as a filmmaker. Like I said, like I feel like I love everyone that worked on it, but it was just that nice moment for me where I felt like I really found my team. And yeah, and it was hard. Like our team worked very hard, like everyone, because pulling this off, we were filming a 6-hour Marvel movie on a TV schedule, which is already a challenge, but doing that in a pandemic as well, like it took a lot of hard work and sacrifice from a lot of people. So no, I'm just very grateful to my team.
What would you like to see in season 2 then as a fan now?
Oh, as a fan, interesting. Well, I'd love to know more about B15, that because I feel like we set that up really nicely. I don't know really. I think honestly, that's the thing I love about Loki, right? Is he's unpredictable. And I think even if I could try and guess what happens in the second season, I think that's kind of what I hope for, honestly, is that the things that I think it will absolutely not be. And I think that's what drew me in when I got the script for the first episode, because I was like, we all had our ideas, right? Where did he go with the Tesseract? But I could not have predicted that it would be, an exploration of self and self-love. And for me, I hope that continues in the next season.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll both definitely be watching that. So, Kate, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
Cheers.
day.